The Supernaturalist by Owen Colfer. Read for you by Aaron Tyson. Chapter 1 Cosmonaut Hill. Satellite City, the Northern Hemisphere. Soon. Satellite City, the city of the future, proclaimed the billboards. A metropolis completely controlled by the Maishi 9 satellite, hovering overhead like a floating man of war. An entire city custom constructed for the third millennium. Everything the body wanted, and nothing the soul needed. 300 square miles of gray steel and automobiles. Satellite City, a super city of 25 million souls, each one with a story more heartbreaking than the last. If it's happily ever after as you wanted, stay away from the city of the future. Take Cosmo Hill, for example. A nice enough boy who had never done anything wrong in his short existence. Unfortunately, this was not enough to guarantee him a happy life, because Cosmo didn't have a sponsor. And in Satellite City, if you didn't have a sponsor and they couldn't trace your natural parents through public record of your DNA files, then you were either sent to an orphanage until you reached childhood, and by that time you were either dead, or the orphanage had fabricated a criminal record for you, so you could be sold to one of the private labor camp prisons. 14 years before we take up the thread of the story, baby Cosmo was discovered swaddled in an insulated chewy pizza envelope on Cosmonaut Hill in Moscow town. The state police swapped him for DNA, searched for a match in the satellite mainframe, and came up blank. Nothing unusual about that. Orphans turn up every day in the city. So the newly christened Cosmo Hill was dipped in a vaccine vat and sent on a tube to the Clarissa Frayne Institute for Parentally Challenged Boys. Freight class. Satellite City was not part of any welfare state, so its institutions had to raise funds in any way they could. Clarissa Frayne's specialty was product testing. Whenever a new modified food or untested pharmaceutical product was being developed, the orphanage volunteered its no-sponsored charges as guinea pigs. It made perfect financial sense. The orphans got fed and cleaned, and the Frayne Institute got paid for the privilege. Cosmo received his schooling from education software. His teeth were whiter than white, and his hair was lustrous and flake-free, but his insides felt like they were being scoured with a radioactive wire brush. Eventually, Cosmo realized that the orphanage was slowly killing him. It was time to get out. There were only three ways out of Clarissa Frayne: adoption, death, or escape. There was zero chance he'd actually be adopted, not at his age. Truculent teenagers were not very popular with the childless middle classes. For years, he had cherished a dream that someone would want him. Now it was time to face facts. Death was much easier to achieve. All he had to do was keep on doing what he was told, and his body would give up in a matter of years. The average life expectancy of an institutionalized orphan was 15 years. Cosmo was 14. That left him with less than 12 months before the statistics said his time was up. 12 months to plan for the final option. There was only one way he would get out of Clarissa Frayne alive: escape. At the Clarissa Frayne Institute for the Parentally Challenged Boys, every day was basically the same: toil by day, fitful sleep by night. There were no days off, no juvenile rights. Every day was a work day. The marshals worked the orphans so hard that by 8 p.m., most of the boys would sleep standing up, dreaming of their beds. Cosmo Hill was the exception. He spent every moment of his waking life waiting for that one chance, that split second when his freedom would beckon to him from outside an unlocked door or an unguarded fence. He must be ready to seize that moment and run with it. It wasn't likely that his chance would come on this particular day, and even if it did, Cosmo didn't think he would have the energy to run anywhere. The no sponsors had spent the afternoon testing a new series of antiperspirants. Their legs had been shaved and sectioned with rings of tape. The flesh between their bands was sprayed with 5 areas of antiperspirant, and then the boys were set on treadmills and told to run. Sensors attached to their legs monitored their sweat glands, determining which spray was most effective. By the end of the day, Cosmo had run 10 miles, and the pores on his legs were inflamed and scalded. He was almost glad to be cuffed to a moving partner and begin the long walk back to the dormitory. Marshal Redwood ushered the boys into the dorm. Redwood resembled a waxed gorilla, with the exception of a red calico, which he toyed with constantly. Now, boys, said Redwood, unblocking one pair of cuffs at a time. There's a game on tonight that I'm very interested in seeing. As a matter of fact, I bet a few dinars on the outcome. So if you know what's good for you... Redwood didn't have to finish his threat. The boys knew that the marshal had 100 legal ways of making a no-sponsor's life miserable, and 1,000 illegal ones. Sleep well, young princess, said the marshal, grinning, keying his coat into the dorm door. Tomorrow, as usual, is a busy day. Jam-packed, full of fun. The no-sponsors relaxed once Redwood had gone, and the silence of discipline was replaced by the groans and sobs of boys in pain. Cosmo touched his leg gingerly, where a particularly acidic spray had actually burned his skin. 5 minutes to lights out, said Redwood's voice over the network of speakers. Climb the ladders, boys! 300 orphans returned immediately to the dozen or so steel ladders and began climbing. Nobody wanted to be stranded on the dorm floor once the ladders were retracted. If the marshals caught no sponsor on the ground after lights out, a 10-mile run would seem like a Sunday stroll compared to the punishment they would dish out. Each boy had assigned space in the dorm where he ate, slept, and passed whatever leisure time the no sponsors had. These rooms were actually sections of cardboard utility pipe that had been sawed into 6-foot lengths. The pipes were suspended by a network of wires almost 50 feet off the ground. Once the pipes were occupied by orphans, the entire contraption swayed like an ocean liner. Cosmo climbed quickly, ignoring the pain in his leg muscles. His pipe was near the top. If the lights were out before he reached it, he could be stranded on the ladder. Each step brought fresh stabs of pain to his tendons, but he climbed on, pressing against the boy ahead of him, with his head, feeling the boy closing in. After a few minutes of feverish climbing, Cosmo reached his level. A narrow walkway, barely the width of his hand, serviced each pipe. Cosmo slid across carefully, gripping a rail on the underside of the walkway above him. His pipe was 4 columns across. Cosmo swung inside, landing on the foam of a mattress. 10 seconds later, the lights went out. A sleek yellow glow lit the interior of each pipe. Dinner. The meals had been thrown in earlier by a marshal with a cherry picker. The meal packs had been tested a few years previously by the no sponsors for use by soldiers in the field. The trays and water bottles were luminous, but also edible, which meant that the orphans could eat out the lights out, saving the management a few dinars. The tray was made from a rough, uneven crisp bread, and the water bottle from a semi-rigid gum. The army had discontinued use of the meal packs following several lawsuits by soldiers, claiming that the luminous packs caused internal bleeding. The orphanage bought up the surplus and fed them to the orphans every single day. Cosmo ate slowly, not bothering to wonder what was in his meal. Wondering about it would only add one more worry to his list. He had to believe that he would escape Clarissa Frame before the meal packs could do him any lasting damage. Cosmo saved the water for last, using most of it to wash down the crisp bread tray. Then he turned the gum bottle inside out, laying it across his head like a face cloth. There must be a better life, he thought glumly. Somewhere, at this very moment, people were talking openly. Surely people were laughing, and real laughter too. Not just the spiteful kind that so often echoed around the orphanage halls. Cosmo laid back, feeling the gum bottle's moisture seeping into his forehead. He didn't want to think tonight. He didn't want to play the parent game. But the sleep he had yearned for was proving elusive. His own parents. Who were they? Why had they abandoned him on Cosmonaut Hill? Maybe he was Russian? Maybe he was Russian. It was impossible to tell from his features. Brown curly hair, brown eyes, light skin, freckled brown. He could be from anywhere. Why had they abandoned him? Cosmo transferred the gum bottle to a red strip on his leg. Shut up, he told his brain. No, not tonight. No living in the past. Look to the future. Someone was knocking gently from the pipe above. It was Ziploc Murphy. The network was opening up. Cosmo answered the knock with one of his own, then pulled back his mattress, signaling fence on the pipe below. The no sponsors had developed a system of communication that allowed them to converse without angering the marshals. Clarissa Frame discouraged actual face-to-face communication between the boys, on the grounds that friendships might develop, and friendships could lead to unity, maybe even revolt. Cosmo dug his nails into a seam in the cardboard pipe and pulled out 2 small tubes. Both had been fashioned from mashed gumballs and crisp bread, then baked on a windowsill. Cosmo screwed on one into a small hole in the lower surface of his pipe, and the other into a hole overhead. Ziplock's voice wafted through from above. "Hey, Cosmo, how are your legs?" "Burning," grunted Cosmo. "I put my gumball on one, but it's not helping." I'll try that. I'll try that. I'll try that. I'll try that too," said fence from below. Antiperspirants. This is nearly as bad as the time antiperspirants. This is nearly as bad as the time they had us testing those creeper slugs. I was throwing up for weeks. Comments and suggestions snuck through the holes from over the pipe construct. The fact that the pipes were touching, along with the acoustics of the hall, meant that voices could travel amazing distances through the network. Cosmo could hear no sponsors whispering 100 yards away. "What does the chemist say?" asked Cosmo. About our legs." The chemist was the orphanage name for a boy 3 kilometers across. He loved to watch medical programs on TV, and it was the closest that no sponsors had to a consultant. Word came back under a mitt. "The chemist says spit on your hands and rub it in. The spit has some kind of salve in it. Don't lick your fingers though, or the antiperspirant will make you sicker than those creeper slugs." The sound of boys spitting through the hall echoed through the hall. The entire lattice of pipes shook with the reference. Cosmo followed the chemist's advice, then lay back, letting 100 different conversations wash over him. Sometimes he would join in, or at least listen to one of Ziplock's yarns. But tonight, all he could think about was that moment when freedom would beckon to him, and being ready when it arrived. Cosmo's chance of freedom came the very next day during a routine transfer. 40 no sponsors, Cosmo among them, had just spent the day at a music company watching proposed TV spots for computer-generated pop groups, followed by a 60-kilobyte questionnaire. Which sim singer did you prefer? Which sim performer was cool? Cool? Even the company's computers were out of touch. Kids rarely said cool anymore. Cosmo barely read the question before checking a box with his digipen. He preferred music made by real people to pixel-generated pop. But nobody complained. A day watching music videos was infinitely preferable to more chemical tests. Frame marshals loaded the no sponsors into a truck after the session. The vehicle must have been 100 years old, with actual rubber tires instead of plastic treads. Cosmo was paired with Ziplock as a cuff partner. Ziplock was okay, except that he talked too much. This was how he earned his orphanage nickname. Once, the Irish boy had talked too much to the wrong person and got a Ziplock from a food bag he superglued over his mouth. It took weeks for the blisters to heal. Not only did Ziplock not learn his lesson, but now he had something else to talk about. They don't call superglue for nothing, Ziplock said animatedly, as one of the marshals threaded the cuffs through the restraint ring in the seat. Medics use their stuff in war zones to seal up the wounded. The bullet straight onto the wounds? Cosmo nodded without much enthusiasm. Ziplock seemed to forget that he'd told the story about 1,000,000 times. Maybe it was because Cosmo was the only one who even pretended to listen while he talked. "Dad used boiling water to get the bag off me face," contained Ziplock. "I didn't feel anything, in case you're worried. One of the marshals shot me entire head full of anesthetic first. They kept been banging 16-inch nails into my skull, and I wouldn't have minded." Cosmo rubbed the flesh beneath the cuffs. All the no sponsors had a ring of red flesh around their wrists, a mark of shame. "You ever tried breathing through your nose for an entire day?" "I pranked a few times, I'll admit it." In the cab, the pilot was uplinking the truck to the navigation section of the satellite, but there had been trouble with the satellite lately. Too many add-ons, the TV brain said. Maishi 9 was simply getting too heavy for its engines to support such a low orbit. There was even talk of some of the company's aerials snapping off and burning up. "What's the delay?" shouted Marshal Redwood. The bulky redhead had bad breath today and a worse attitude. Too many beers the night before. His pendulous belly spoke of too many beers almost every night. "If I'm late again tonight, Agnes swears she's moving to assist us." "It's the satellite!" shouted the pilot. "I can't get a line!" "We'll make a line. or my boot's gonna make a line to your butt. Ziploc snicker just lined up for Redwood to hear. You think I'm joking, Francis? Shouted the man, boxing Ziploc on the ear. You think I wouldn't do it? No, sir. You do it okay. You got the look in your eyes. It isn't smart to mess with a man who's got that look. Redwood lifted Ziploc's chin till their eyes met. You know something, Francis? That's the first clever thing I've ever heard you say. It isn't smart to mess with me, because I do whatever I please. The only reason I don't get rid of a dozen of you freaks every day is the paperwork. I hate paperwork. Ziploc should have left it there, but he couldn't. His big mouth just wouldn't let him. I heard that about you, sir. Redwood tugged harder on Ziploc's chin, cranking it up a few more notches. What's that, Francis? What did you hear? Cosmo tugged on the cuff chain, a warning. Redwood was not a man to push over the edge. Even the Psycho Kids were afraid of Redwood. There were stories about him. No sponsors had gone missing. But Ziploc couldn't stop. The words were spewing out of him like agitated bees from a hive. I heard you don't like the paperwork on account of some of the words having more than 3 letters. The sentence was followed by a high-pitched giggle, more hysteria than humor. Cosmo realized that Ziploc was in for the psycho ward, if he lived that long. Redwood transferred his fingers to Ziploc's throat, squeezing casually. Morons like you never get it. Being a smart mouth doesn't win you any prizes in this city. It just gets you hurt. Or worse. The satellite saved Ziploc's neck, beaming down a transportation plan just before Redwood could tighten his fingers another notch. The truck lurched from its spot in the parking bay, rolling onto the main highway. A guiding rod extended from below the chassis, sliding into a corresponding groove in the highway. We're locked in, called the pilot. 10 minutes to the Institute. Redwood released Ziploc's neck. You've got the look of the Irish, Francis. I'm too happy to inflict pain on you now. But later, when I'm in a bad mood, you can count on it. Ziploc drew a greedy breath. He knew from experience that soon his windpipe would shrink to the diameter of a straw, and he would whistle when he spoke. Keep a lid on it, Cosmo, hissed Ziploc hissed Cosmo, watching the marshal continue on the weapon. Redwood is crazy. We're not real people to him. Ziploc nodded, rubbing his thin throat. I can't help it, he rasped, tears in his eyes. The joke just comes out of my mouth. This life just drives me crazy. Cosmo knew that feeling well. It visited him most times as he lay in the pipe, listening to the cries all around him. You must feel it too, Cosmo. You think anyone's going to dump the borderline psycho kid? Or, I don't know, a moody teenager like yourself? Cosmo looked away. He knew that neither of them led the likely adoptee profile. But Ziploc had always managed to pretend that today was the day his new parents would show up. Denying that dream meant that Ziploc was steering on the brink of crack-up. Cosmo rested his forehead against the window, watching the city beyond the glass. They were in the projects now, flashing past gray apartment blocks, pig iron buildings, which is why the locals referred to Satellite City as the Big Pig. Not that the material was actually pig iron. It was a super strong steel-based polymer that was supposed to stay cool in summer and warm in winter, but managed to do exactly the opposite. The truck shuddered violently. Something had rear-ended them. Redwood was thrown to the floor as plastic planks. Hey! What's going on up there? He said. Cosmo raised himself to the cuff's limits, straining to see. The pilot was on his feet, repeatedly punching his skull into the uplink lid. It's the satellite, he said. We lost our link. No link? That meant they were out there in an overcrowded highway with no pattern to follow. Minnows in a sea full of hammerheads. They were struck again, sideswiped this time. Cosmo glimpsed the delivery minivan careering off the highway, bumper mangled. Redwood struggled to his feet. Go to manual, you cretin! Use the steering wheel! The pilot paled. Steering wheels were only used in rural zones, or for illegal drag racing in the Bushka region. More than likely, he had never wrestled with a steering wheel in his life. The choice of sticking away from the unfortunate man, when a revolving advertising drone hit him head-on, crushing the cab like a concertina. The pilot was lost in a haze of glass and wiring. The impact was tremendous, lifting the truck off from its groove and flipping it onto its side. Cosmo and Ziploc dangled from their chairs, stayed by their restraining cuffs. Redwood and the other marshals were scattered like so many leaves in a storm. Cosmo couldn't tell how many times the other vehicles collided with the truck. After the time, the impacts blended together like the final notes of a frenetic drum solo. Huge dents appeared in the paneling, accompanied by resonating thunderclaps. Every window was smashed, raining crystal rainbows. Cosmo hung on. What else could he do? Beside him, Ziploc's hysterical laughter was almost as piercing as the shot of glass. "Oh man, this is it!" shouted the Irish boy. The truck revolved in a half-turn, slewing off the highway in a cascade of sparks. Chunks of asphalt collapsed beneath the onslaught, leaving a 30-meter trench in the vehicle's wake. They eventually came to rest after smashing through the window of the Dragon's Beard Chinese restaurant. The spicy odors of ginger and soy mingled with the smells of machine blood and oil. Cosmo put one foot on the windowsill, taking the strain off his arm. "Ziploc! Francis, are you okay?" "Yeah, still here." The boy sounded disappointed. Throughout the bus, no sponsors were groaning and yelling for help. Some were injured, a few were worse. The marshals were generally out for the count, either that or staring at whichever limb was pointing the wrong way. Redwood gingerly touched his swelling nose. I think it's broken," he moaned. Agnes is gonna love this." "Oh well," said Ziploc, dangling above Redwood's frame. "Every cloth has a silver lining." Redwood froze, crouching on all fours like a pit bull. A fat drop of blood slipped from one nostril, falling through an empty window frame. "What did you say?" The marshal spoke slowly, making sure every word came out right. Cosmo swung his foot across, catching his cup on in ribs. "Shut up, Ziploc. What happens to you happens to me." Okay. I didn't say anything, Marshal. I think it told." But it was too late. An invisible line had been crossed. In the midst of all the chaos, Redwood retreated into himself. When he came back out, he was altogether a more dangerous individual. The way I see it," he said, standing slowly to face the dangling boys, and running a pocket comb through his precious red locks, "is that your cuff ring snapped, and you tried to escape." In spite of his quick mouth, Ziploc was a bit slow to catch on. "What are you talking about, Mr. Redwood?" "There's something wrong with our cuff ring. Look!" He tugged the cuff to demonstrate. "I ordered you to stop, but you wouldn't listen." Redwood sighed dramatically, his nose whistling slightly. "I had no choice but to shrink wrap you." Shrink wrap was security speak for the cellophane virus slugs that the marshals loaded their gas-powered rods with. Once the slug hit a solid object, the virus was released and coated the target with a restrictive layer of cellophane. The cellophane was porous enough to allow shallow breathing, but had been known to squeeze so tightly that it cracked ribs. Cosmo had been shrink wrapped once before. He spent a week in a body cast as a result. Cosmo elbowed Ziploc aside. Marshal Redwood, sir, Francis didn't mean anything. He's just an idiot. I'll teach him, sir. Let me take care of it. You go get your nose fixed up." Redwood patted Cosmo's cheek. "It's a pity, Hill, because I always liked you. You don't stand up for yourself. But unfortunately, all wars have collateral damage." The marshal reached over, inserting a swipe card into the cuff ring. The boy dropped 2 meters, crumpling into a carpet of glass. Redwood drew his rod and checked the chamber. "I'm a reasonable man," he said. "You've got 20 seconds. Cosmo shook the glass from his clothes, dragging Ziploc to his feet. This was it. His chance had come. Live or die. "Why don't you give us 30 seconds? Redwood laughed. "Now why would I do that?" Cosmo grabbed the marshal's nose, twisting almost 90 degrees. "That's why!" Redwood's eyes filled with tears and he collapsed, writhing in the broken glass. "Let's go!" said Cosmo, grabbing Ziploc by the elbow. "We have 30 seconds!" Ziploc stirred his grunt. I want to spend me half a minute watching Redwood squirm." Cosmo ran toward the rear window, dragging the Irish boy with him. Use your imagination. I prefer to live." They climbed through the broken window into the restaurant. Diners were hugging the walls in case the truck decided to lurch another few feet. In a few more seconds, the city police would arrive, and all avenues of escape would be blocked off. The searchlights from TV birds were already poking through the decimated front wall. Ziploc grabbed a couple of duck pancakes from a stunned diner's plate. The no sponsors had heard of freshly prepared food, but never tasted any before. Ziploc stuffed one to his own mouth, offering the other to his cuff partner. Cosmo was stupid enough not to refuse food, no matter what the circumstances. Who knew when they get to eat again, if they ever did? This could be the condemned boy's final meal. He bit into the pancake, and the tangy sauce saturated his tongue. For a boy raised on prepackaged developmental food, it was almost a religious experience, but he couldn't pause to enjoy it. Sirens were already cutting through the engine hiss. Cosmo ran towards the rear of the restaurant, dragging Ziploc behind him. A waiter blocked their path. He wore a striped jumpsuit, and his hair was exceptionally shiny, even by product-tested standards. "Hey, he said vaguely, not sure if he wanted to get involved. The boy skipped around the man before he could make up his mind. A back door led to a narrow stairway, winding out of sight. Possibly to freedom, possibly to a single-room dead end. There was no time for conscious decision. Redwood would be coming soon, if he wasn't already on his way. They took the stairs, squeezed together shoulder to shoulder. "We're never gonna make it," panted Ziploc, plump sauce dribbling down his chin. "I hope he doesn't get us before I finish this pancake." Cosmo increased the pace, the cuff digging into his wrist. "We will make it. We will." The boys rounded the corner straight into a luxurious studio apartment. A man's face peered out from beneath a large double bed. "The earthquake," the man squeaked. "Is it over?" "Not yet," replied Ziploc. "The big shock is on its way." "Heaven help us all," said the man, retreating behind the fridge of a chintz bed cover. Ziploc giggled. "Let's go, before he realizes that his reporters are one of our no sponsors." The apartment was decorated with ancient Chinese artifacts. Suits of battle armor stood in each corner, and jade dragons lined the shelves. The main room had several windows, but most were decorative plasma. Only one led to Satellite City. Cosmo popped the clip, pulling over the triple glazed reactor-light pane. Ziploc shoved his face into the outside air. "Excellent," he said. "A fire escape. Are we done?" Cosmo stepped through on the metal grill. "Down is what Redwood will expect. We go up." Ziploc held back. "Up?" Cosmo pulled him through. "Don't tell me the boy who irritates marshals for fun is afraid of heights." "No," replied Ziploc, pallor washing his gaunt face. "I'm afraid of the ground." Marshal Redwood didn't pass out. He wasn't that lucky. Instead, a block of pain battered him like a malignant glacier. He combated the agony using a trick from his army days. Locate the white center of the pain and concentrate on it. Redwood found to his surprise that the root of his pain was not his nose, but in the center of his forehead. He focused on that spot, sucking in the pain and containing it. He trapped it there barely long enough to pop a pain tap from his plastic bubble in his medikit. Barely a minute later, the pain receded to a dull throb behind one ear. Under control, for now. Back to business. Those no sponsors had thrown his full authority back in his face. Those two were getting shrink-wrapped for sure. Still, best to pretend to follow the rules. He unclipped a communicator from his belt. "Redwood to base." "That you, Redwood? We thought you were dead." Redwood scowled. Fred Alascanti was on duty back at base. That man made Goldfish look smart. "Yeah, well, I'm alive, but I got a couple of runners. I'm leaving now in pursuit." "I don't know, Marshal Redwood. You're supposed to stay with the vehicle. Regulations. They're sending a truck for you. 5 minutes tops." Redwood lifted a rod from one of his unconscious colleagues. "Negative. The no sponsors are armed and have already fired cellophane slugs. Can you imagine the lawsuit Clarissa Frank will be looking at if they wrap a civilian?" Redwood did not answer for a few moments. Doubtless he was checking protocol in the security manual. "Okay, Redwood, maybe you could knock them around a bit first. That way we get to test some of the new pharmaceuticals." That was typical of the Institute, always looking for the upside. A new batch of synthetic skin had just come in, but they need people with wounds to test it. Redwood hid the throwdown rod inside his jacket. "I'll see what I can do." In the restaurant, patrons were escaping through a side door. Not that they were guilty of anything, but nobody wanted to spend their evening answering questions from private security, state police, insurance agents, and lawyers. When Redwood clambered through the remains of the escape hatch, people would instinctively step out of his way. The marshal's fierce eyes and pulp mass of a face made it seem wise to not obstruct him. For a man in pursuit of fugitives, Redwood didn't seem overly eager or even anxious, and why would he be? Though the no sponsors were not aware of it, escape was impossible. Every move they made was being tracked. These were not the kind of trackers that could be discarded. They went in every pore. Whenever the no sponsors took a shower, the skin was coated with microbeads of an electromagnetic halogen solution, which would show up on the glycerine scanner. Even if the orphans stopped taking showers, the solution would take months to wear off. Redwood keyed the talk button on his communicator. Fred, send the Hill C and Murphy F tracker patterns to my handset. Fred cleared his throat into the mic. The tracker patterns? Redwood ground his teeth. Damn it, Fred. Is Bruce there? Put Bruce on. Bruce got called for a little situation in D-Block. I'm on my lonesome here. Okay, Fred. Listen to me carefully. Punch up Cosmo and Ziploc on the tracker file, then email the patterns to my handset. Use the email icon. My number is right there under personnel. All you have to do is drag and drop the folders. Got it? Fred wiped his swaying brow. Over the radio, it sounded like sandpaper on soft wood. I got it. Drag the folders? No problem. Here it comes. It better be coming, or I'm coming for you. It was Redwood's habit to turn statements into threats. At some coffee shops, he was known to say, It better be hot, or I'll make it hot for you. Redwood thought this was extremely clever. 5 seconds later, 2 moving icons appeared on the small screen on Redwood's communicator, placing the fugitives on a fire escape outside the building. Going up too, the idiots. What were they going to do? Fly off the roof? Redwood grinned, actually bringing tears of pain to his eyes. Fly off the roof? That wasn't such a bad idea. In Satellite City, raindrops could take a person's eye out if he was foolish enough to look up during a storm. Reaction with certain toxic fumes caused the water molecules to bond more efficiently until they fell to Earth like missiles. Traditional umbrellas were no longer sufficient, and new rigid plastic models were becoming popular in the Big Pig. Ziploc and Cosmo did not have the luxury of umbrellas to help them through the current downpour, and had to make do with keeping their eyes down and shoulders hunched. Raindrops battered their necks and back, but the boys were so cold they barely felt any pain. Ziploc was thrown against the fire escape by a flurry of drops. I can see the city. I've always wanted to see the city without shackles on my wrist. Maybe we can do that soon, Cosmo. Just walk around without shackles. Cosmo saved his energy for flight. The roof was still 1 floor up. After that, they were banking on good fortune. Maybe they could make the jump to the next building. Or maybe not. They hugged the wall, avoiding the brunt of the rainstorm. Below, in the streets, car alarms were activated by the mutant drops. Security firms never responded to car call-outs during a rainstorm. They were always set up by weather conditions, or very foolish carjackers. Cosmo rounded the final corner on the roof, a flat expanse of slick, tar-coated felt, punctuated by a stairwell box, like a submarine's conning tower. The box's corrugated roof was buckling under the rain's onslaught, and suddenly the downpour stopped, as though God had turned off the water, another characteristic of Satellite City's freakish weather. Someone up there likes us, said Cosmo. It's a bit late for that, commented Cosmo, shaking the water from his hair. Let's go! They padded across the saturated felt. With every step, the room sagged alarmingly, and in several spots, the support girders were visible through sparse strands of felt. The connecting building was 1 story down. As a landing pad, it left a lot to be desired. The rooftop was laid with the remains of a squatter camp. Breeze blocks lay like discarded dominoes, and sparks spluttered from the cracked casing of a rooftop generator. Cosmo hugged his toes over the edge, trying not to think about the drop. You think we can make it? He asked. Ziploc's reply was to blink back from the brink. Cosmo was undeterred. I think we can make it. I really think we can. I don't think you will, either of you, said someone in nasal tones. Anybody who spoke like that either had a bad cold or a broken nose. Cosmo and Ziploc turned slowly. Marshal Redwood was stood in the rooftop doorway, lips stretched into a huge grin. Tears were streaming down his cheeks. I took the elevator, he explained. You two are dumber than recycled sewage. What did you think? Going up would fool me? Cosmo didn't answer. It wasn't really a question. Water was dripping from his hair, down between his shoulder blades. Perhaps that was what made him shiver. We surrender, Marshal. Don't we, Ziploc? Ziploc was too petrified to answer. Too late for surrender. You're armed fugitives now. I can't take any chances. You gotta be wrapped. Redwood took the throw down from his vest, dropping it at their feet. Cosmo's breath came in short gasps. Please, Marshal. We're on the rooftop. It could be hours before they get us in the vat. The vat contained an acidic compound used to dissolve the cellophane. Oh no, said Redwood, the craziness in his eyes shining through his tears. Redwood marched over the Ziploc, gathering a bunch of his lapel in his fists. He leaned the terrified boy over the roof. This is the last lesson, Francis. You better learn from this one. Ziploc began to giggle, hysterical laughter that had nothing to do with happiness. Redwood placed the rod against his forehead. I'd advise you to shut your mouth, Francis. You don't want any plastic going in there. Do your worst, Redwood, shouted Ziploc, eyes wide. I can't get any more scared than I am right now. Redwood laughed, causing a fresh split of his tear ducts. Oh, I don't know about... Then Ziploc's jumpsuit ripped. One too many cleanings had left it with the strength of wet cardboard. Redwood was left holding a rose-shaped bunch of material, and Ziploc was left at an angle he couldn't correct. His final word to Cosmo, Sorry, he said, and slipped over the edge. It wasn't a long way down. School children had jumped from higher trees and escaped without so much as a twisted ankle. But when Ziploc went over, he went over backwards, dragging Cosmo with him. There was no time for prayer or screams. Cosmo's life didn't flash before his eyes. One moment, he was playing with Marshal Redwood. The next, land and sky flipped, and he was face down in the next building's rooftop generator. Alive, though, definitely, in some considerable pain, but alive. Pain was proof of that. Cosmo's vision was filled with multicolored wires, sparks, ancient transformers, and rush ships that fluttered around his head like bloody snowflakes. His arm jiggled. Ziploc was moving. No, Cosmo whispered, no way for shining. Don't move. Ziploc moved again. Maybe he had heard, maybe he hadn't. Cosmo would never know. His partner's movement dragged the metal cuff across two exposed wires, diverting 10,000 volts from the supply wires and into the two boys. The charge catapulted the boys from the generator, spraying them across the roof piles like stones across a pond. They came to rest upon a guardrail, on their backs, looking up. Redwood peered down from above. Both boys' pads had disappeared from his tracker. The generator could have shorted out the electron-negative halogen quantum beads in their pores, and most likely they were dead. It was obvious what could have happened. The fugitives had been knocked on the roof by the rainstorm. It was a simple lie, and believable too, as long as he didn't stick around to get photographed by some Snoop satellite. The marshal hurried to the stairwell, ready to let someone else find the bodies. He wouldn't be in the restaurant helping the injured when it happened. Cosmo didn't have the energy to speak. His entire body felt bleached by the electric shock. All he could hear was his own heartbeat, slowing every breath, missing beats, and shutting down. His eyes played tricks on him. Hallucinations, he supposed. Strange inhuman creatures appeared on the walls of the surrounding buildings, crawling at amazing speeds with no regard for gravity. They hurtled over the lip of the building, veering sharply downward toward the crash site. Two split from the group, swerving together towards the injured boys. One settled on Cosmo's chest, weightless, watching him with large, expressionless eyes. The creature was the size of an infant, with smooth, blue, translucent skin, 4 slender limbs, and an oval head. Its features were delicate and impassive, hairless and smooth. Sparks swirled in his veins instead of blood. The second creature flickered in the corner of his eye, settling beside Ziploc, cradling his smoking head. Cosmo felt his heart skip another beat, maybe 2. What were these creatures? Fear sent a shiver through his chest, like another blast from the generator. His spine arched in shock and panic, buckling the creature on his chest, but it held on effortlessly. It reached out a blue hand. 4 fingers, thought Cosmo. Only 4. The hand settled on his heart and sucked. Somehow the hand was pulling the pain from his body. The agony dipped, faded, and was gone. The more the creature sucked, the brighter its light became, until its blue glow morphed to sunset gold. Cosmo used the last of his energy to look down. Something was falling out of him in a starry stream. He knew what it was. Life. Cosmo felt his days and months slip from his body like water through a fractured dam. The creature was killing him. The panic in him rose again. He wanted to struggle. He tried to grab the creature, but his muscles had turned to jelly. Then, things happened very quickly. 3 kids appeared on the roof. 2 boys and a girl. They weren't masks of any kind. That much was clear from their clothing and their ages. But at least they were human. "To here," said the boy. A tall, older boy clothed from head to foot in black. I'll take them. You check below." His comrades scurried to the roof's edge, peering down the street. "They're looking, but they're not landing," said the second newcomer, a Latina girl, maybe 15, with a gang tattoo of one eyebrow. "Too much water. The fire brigade are hosing the track." The first youth drew what looked like a torch from his shoulder holster, twisting a ring on its base. White sparks flickered at the business end. What looked like a flashlight from his shoulder holster, twisting a ring on its base. White sparks flickered at the business end. He fired the device on the move. 2 blasts of pure energy erupted from the barrel of the strange weapon. The effect was spectacular. The white bolts sank into the ghostly creature's skin, branching into a million tendrils. Each one traced a vein, fusing with the sparks already there. The creature shuddered and convulsed, the skin swelling to bursting point, and past it. They both exploded into a dozen perfect spheres of light, which drifted away on the breeze. "Wow," croaked Cosmo, wasting his last gasp of air. "A live one!" said the group's third member, who seemed to be about 6 years old, blonde, with a child's disproportionately large head. He knelt beside Cosmo, checking his heartbeat and shining a light on people. "No dilation and regular heartbeat. He needs a defibrillator, Stefan. We need to kickstart it. No dilation and irregular heartbeat. He needs a defibrillator, Stefan. We need to kickstart his heart." Hallucination. It must be hallucination. The tall youth, Stefan, loomed in Cosmo's faint vision. "What about the other one, Tito?" Cosmo placed a hand on Ziplock's chest. For a second, Cosmo thought he saw a live stream playing around his fingers, then... "And the other one? No." The other one? No. He's gone. Not a peep." Stefan adjusted his weapon. "Well, I don't have a defibrillator." Dido stepped away hurriedly. "You sure? This river's wet." Cosmo pointed the weapon at Cosmo's chest. "No," he said, and fired. Cosmo felt the charge going in like a sledgehammer through his ribs. Surely it must have broken every bone in his body. Surely this was the last straw. His body couldn't take no more. He felt his hair straightening, tugging at the pores in his scalp. His jumpsuit caught fire, dripping from his skin and burning clumps. Dido doused it with the remaining contents of a nearby fire bucket. But Cosmo didn't feel the cold. Something else was happening. Ba-doom! His heart beating again and again. Ba-doom! Ba-doom! We've got him!" cried Dido. This guy's got the will to live of a hungry dog, but he needs serious medical attention. His head's cracked open like an egg." Stefan sighed, relieved that his gamble had paid off. He holstered the lightning rod. "Okay, the lawyers will find him. I don't want them to find us. I don't want them to find us too." Cosmo drew his first breath of a minute. "Please." They couldn't just leave him, not after this. "Take me." Stefan didn't look back. "I'm sorry. We have enough trouble looking after ourselves." Cosmo knew that Redwood would never allow him to reach the Institute alive. "Please." The girl leaned over. "You know, Stefan, maybe you could make some coffee or something." Stefan sighed, hoping the door opened for his team. "Mona, we go through this every night." Mona sighed. "Tough break, kid." Cosmo's heart beat steadily now, sending blood pulsing to his brain. "If you leave me," he rasped, "they'll come back." And suddenly Stefan was half interested. "Who'll come back?" he said, striding across the roof. Cosmo struggled to stay conscious. "The creatures." Dido clapped his hands. "Did you hear that? The creature, Stefan. He's a spotter. Rat me if he isn't." Stefan shrugged. "It could be nothing. Maybe one of us mentioned the creatures. Maybe it was a hallucination." Stefan coughed up some smoke. "The blue creatures, with electricity in their veins. They were sucking the life out of me." "Pretty accurate hallucination," right? Noted Mona. Stefan nodded Ditto. "Okay, we take him. He's a spotter." The Spanish girl examined the cuffs. "Okay, Stefan, give me a minute." "A second, Mona. We can spare a second." Mona picked a clip from her hair, jiggling it expertly into cuffs lock, In slightly more than 1 second, Ziplock's wrist was free. Not that it was any good to him now. Stefan hoisted Cosmo onto his shoulder. Let's go. We can open the other cover of the warehouse. Cosmo hung there like a side of meat. He could have spoken then, asked a few more questions, but he didn't. Afraid that if he pestered this tall young man, he would decide not to take him wherever it was they were going. And anywhere was better than the Clarissa Frame Institute for the parentally challenged. Cosmo decided there was no room for this new feeling of relief, and his brain shut him down for repairs.